Shabbat Shalom, going out to the 12 tribes of Israel, scattered around the four corners of the world. Say hallelujah and greetings to all of those who are listening and joining in on today. We certainly greet those who are in the body of the Mashiach here and there around the world. We salute all of our brothers and sisters. We thank you for being a part of this Sabbath class on today. We certainly give glory and honor unto our Messiah, our King, the one who rules, has all authority and all power in heaven and earth. All power was given unto our Messiah from his Ab, from our Father, which is in heaven. Give praise and glory unto his word and his spirit on today. We're looking for greater things. We're looking to gain more in knowledge and understanding. We're looking to grow in wisdom, grow in grace, grow in mercy, knowing that his throne of glory and throne of mercy. And when we say throne is a position of power, position of rulership, position of ownership, and a position of judgment. So he says he sits on the thrones, or he sits on the throne in heaven, means he has the power and the authority. He has the reign and the rule, and he has the judgment over all things. So he sits on that throne. He said the earth is his footstool, which is under the heavens. And this book that was given, that was written unto us, or the word, the Torah, the word of the Most High, which was given unto us, was given unto them who inhabit the earth. We're here to inhabit the earth, and that's what he gave us, was his word. This Torah, this instruction book that we have, teaches us and enlightens us, gives us revelation of things pertaining to this earth, of all of the Torah, that what was written, that we have, that we understand. We don't have Torah that explains and teaches us things in the Shamayim, or in the heavens. If you want to know, I want to know about heaven. A lot of people talk about that. I want to know about heaven. I want to walk in heaven and everything. But Torah doesn't teach you about heaven. It's not telling you what's going on in the heavens. There's this Torah, this book, is given to teach us about this earth and what's going on and what will go on, past, present, and future, on the earth. It was given unto us, and we understand it. Most of what we understand, if not all of our understanding of this book, was given unto us by our oppressor. All of the men who are scholars today, whether you can put any title behind their names, and you can put them in any place, any position. But what I'm going to talk about mostly today is what we call the body of the Mashiach, the congregation, the assembly. They, in our history book, in the Bible here, the Torah, it referred to the gathering of people as a congregation. And of the congregation that's spoken of, when you translate it from the Hebrew into the Greek, into various languages, and we eventually get it in English, and we call it the church. But before it became the church, and I'm just talking about the word itself, It was in Greek, circa. And then from circa in Greek, you go to English, and it's called church. But if you go back to who it was given to and who it was written unto a congregation of people that he had selected. Why did he choose Abraham? When we look at Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, why did he choose them? He chose Abraham because Abraham simply believed him. When he spoke unto Abraham, Abraham believed him, and it was counted unto him as righteousness. But what was given unto Abraham from the time, and we're going to look into some of that today, was about everything that's going to happen here on earth. He didn't give his word and make a covenant with Abraham and his seed after him. That's what we pick up from Brother Shaul in the book of Galatians, where it says he didn't say unto seeds as many, but unto thy seed, which was Mashiach. But what he had given unto Abraham and to his seed was what was going to be on earth and what was going to happen on this earth. He gives them understanding. He makes a promise and a covenant with Abraham that many have pretty much disregarded the covenant that he made, the covenant that he made with Abraham, the covenant that he made with Jacob, or he changed his name to Israel, the covenant that he made with them, the covenant that he made with Christ, who we are in his body, and we follow and we're under his teaching. But this book, if the interpretation of this book and the understanding of Torah is given to you through the lens of a foreign nation, that explains why we can get so far off on our understanding of the book. If I'm being taught this book and this Torah through the lens and through the interpretation and understanding of a nation that it wasn't given to, well, then my understanding is going to be through their knowledge, through their language, through their interpretation. That's how I'm going to understand this. I want to go to a common verse that I like to read. It's part of my reading in St. John 16 and 13. When we look at St. John 16 and 13, it says, "Howbeit, when he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he will guide you into all truth." So this Spirit of truth has to be the Spirit of Torah, or the word of Torah, the voice of Torah. If it's not the voice of Torah and the Spirit of Torah, that is the Spirit of truth, then you're going to get off into error, and you'll get into error. You get into division. You'll get into doctrines of devils. You'll get into false prophets. You'll just fall prey to the wicked one if the Spirit of truth is not guiding you into all truth. And that's what we see. We see a lot. We see a lot today that begs an understanding, because I can't understand, and I go back to when my eyes were open, and when the Spirit of truth was guiding me into all truth. But the things that had been delivered and given unto me was actually contrary to the Spirit of truth when I started to hear his voice and to hear the Spirit walk through the scriptures and through Torah. Now, by no means am I indicting anyone. I don't want people to think that I'm against this, I'm against that. I'm for truth. So when you hear his voice and you are guided into truth, I don't have to indict anyone. All I have to do is speak truth. And then truth does the indictment, really. Truth is the one that will show people the error of their way. This book was given unto us, and it explains to us from the time of the creation of Adam all the way to the end, and even the end of this earth and heaven, and the new heaven and the new earth. I mean, it talks about that. That's what we have. That's the voice that's given to us. That's the Spirit that speaks through Torah. And I know a lot of people, people want to go to heaven, and they said they're going to heaven, but where is that in this book of Torah that explains heaven? Out of the prophets, out of Moses, out of Mashiach, the apostles, Brother Shaul. I'm mindful of Brother Shaul. He said that he went up to the third heaven and he heard words that he was not allowed to utter, or he was not allowed to repeat. He didn't know if it was an out-of-body experience. He says, whether I was in the body or out of the body, I can't tell. But I went up into the third heaven and he heard things. But there's nothing really written on the government or the kingdom or the living in heaven. Everything that's explained in this book is explained about what's going to happen here on earth and what's coming here on earth and how it's going to be forever here on earth. So how could it be interpreted to me that I'm not going to be here on earth when the whole book is about earth, because earth is a witness to him? How is it that I'm not going to be here on earth? I'm going to be somewhere else that I can't even explain. I can't explain it. I can't pull it out in scripture. Even the city, a lot of people want to talk about the city called heaven, and the city that Abraham looked for, and he searched for a city whose builder and maker is the Most High. But even that city, we find out in Revelation, it comes down here on the earth. It's going to be here on the earth. And so when the Spirit of truth comes, he begins to guide you into all truth. I understand more now as the Spirit guides me and I hear the voice of this book, not the voice of my oppressor. I've gotten away from that voice. I've gotten away from that understanding, because I hope I can explain it. But it takes an understanding of Abraham, what was given to Israel, Moses, our Messiah, and then why people think that the Messiah came and destroyed all the works of Moses. Now, if somebody believes that the Messiah came to destroy the works of Moses, that's through the lens and the interpretation of someone that it wasn't even given to. It wasn't given to them. Even the ones who the book was given to, Torah was given to, they fought to bloody death, even Stephen, because they thought he was going to do away with Moses' teaching. And he was preaching the Mashiach and not Moses' teaching. And it caused them to stone Stephen. So any kind of teaching that says he came to destroy Moses and everything that Moses wrote and destroy Israel and Abraham is the understanding through the lens of a nation or a people or individual who this book was not given to. So in order for me to understand this book, like it says here, the Spirit of truth has come. He's going to guide you into all truth. It takes the spirit or the voice of this book to give the interpretation or the understanding of this book. And if you're not hearing the voice of the book, the Spirit of truth, if you're not hearing it, then you're going to easily be led away into understanding a number of various different doctrines. Let me show you just one quick illustration in Matthew 5 and 17. He says, our Messiah says, "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill." So there's no intent in the heart of our Mashiach to destroy what was given by Moses. Nothing. Because we're going to look at the covenant that was given to Moses. Now let's go to 1 John chapter 3 and verse 8. 1 John chapter 3 and verse 8. He that committeth sin is of the devil. For the devil sinneth from the beginning. For this purpose, the Son of Yah, the Son of Elohim, Ben Elohim, was manifest, that he might destroy the works of the devil. So he didn't come to destroy Moses' teaching. He came to destroy the works of the devil. So the works of the devil was to destroy Moses' teaching and to destroy Israel. That's the work of the devil. And Israel, much of Israel, has helped the devil in the destruction of Moses, the Mashiach of Israel. They've helped the devil in this destruction. Our Messiah did not come to destroy Moses. He came to destroy the works of the devil. And the works of the devil was against Torah, the teachings of Torah, and against our Father in heaven. It even talks about, he was a murderer from the beginning. From the very beginning, he was destructive. From the very beginning, he was disobedient. From the very beginning, even before Adam and Eve was created, when Satan was up in heaven, iniquity was found in him. Disobedience and lawlessness was found in him. That's what got him ushered out of heaven and cast to earth. And now that he's here on earth, his whole purpose is to destroy, to go against our Father and everything that comes from him. He seeks to destroy it. So anybody that's talking about the destruction of the covenant or destroy the law is actually doing the bidding of Satan, where Christ came to destroy his works. What are you saying? Well, there's a lot of people who say they are for Christ and for our Mashiach, but actually they're doing the works of the devil. Because you cannot destroy the teachings of this book and say that you are of Christ. I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm going to go there today, but it even says in I think it's the end of the 6th chapter of Acts, going into the 7th chapter, when Stephen gave his last sermon, when he spoke, and it says that they brought him before the council, and there was those who bore false witness. Well, we might as well let's look at Acts chapter 6. Acts chapter 6, and I'm going to go down to verse 12 and 13. And they stirred up the people and the elders and the scribes and came upon him and caught him and brought him to the council. Speaking about Stephen. Now listen to what they did. They set up false witnesses. So these were false witnesses speaking against Stephen. So what they said about Stephen was what? False. What they said about Stephen was false. So what did they say about Stephen? This man ceaseth not to speak blasphemous words against this holy place and the law. That's a false witness. What they just said there was not true. Because especially when you start to hear Stephen in his whole sermon in chapter 7, he speaks nothing against the law, but do you know who he's speaking against? He's speaking against the people because they would not keep the commandments. That's what he was speaking against, and that's why Christ came. Christ came because the people were not keeping the commandments. They had broke covenant. And so that's why Christ came, and his blood is the New Testament. Well, like he says it himself, is the New Testament. The forgiveness of their sins was because they broke Torah. Sin is the transgression of the law, and that's why Christ came, and his blood. Now, the blood of bulls and goats could not save them. It took the blood of Christ, the blood of our Mashiach, to actually bring about the forgiveness of their transgression against Torah. So what these false witnesses were saying, this man ceaseth not to speak blasphemous words against this holy place and the law. So that right there was a lie. Remember now, they're false witnesses. For we have heard him say that this Jesus of Nazareth shall destroy this place and shall continue the customs and shall change the customs which Moses delivered us. That was a false witness against Stephen, because Stephen was not witnessing to the destruction of any of the customs. He was not witnessing to that. He's going to destroy this place. And it wasn't Christ who was going to destroy. In fact, there was two things Christ said. Christ said, destroy this temple in 3 days. I'm going to raise it up. And he was speaking of his body. Another time he prophesied that the destruction of Jerusalem was coming, but he wasn't going to do it. It was actually the Romans who did it. So it was a false witness that they had placed on Stephen. Reading this, if you don't hear the voice of this book and the spirit of truth of this book, reading this, you think that Christ came to destroy Moses' teachings. You think that Stephen was there to destroy the Moses teaching, just like these false witnesses. But that's not why Christ came. He came to destroy the works of the devil. Another thing that Christ did, let's go to Romans chapter 15 and verse number 8. And now I say that Jesus Christ was a minister of the circumcision for the truth of Elohim, to confirm the promises. To confirm the promises that were made unto the fathers. So his very ministry to Israel, he was letting Israel know when he came, just by me coming, I want you to know that everything that Ab promised and the covenant that Ab gave to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, to the covenant that he made to Israel, all the promises of that covenant is intact. My very appearance and my very coming is to certify and to confirm my very presence. The very presence of the Mashiach is confirmation of the promises that he made to Abraham. But what will the devil do? What will Satan do? He will deceive and divert from these promises and give you a promise and make you think something totally different. So, and I don't want to, anybody who believes they're going to heaven and they're going to live up in heaven throughout eternity, I'm not, go ahead and believe that. That's what you want to believe. I'm not going against that. I'm not indicting that. All I'm trying to do is speak what the voice of this book is speaking. You have some that believe they're going to live throughout eternity in heaven. That you have to prove that doctrine through Scripture. And when you understand that your reign is with Christ, and then where is Christ going to be? Where is he taking up his reign? Where is he taking up his kingdom? And then looking at the promises, he's going to reign here on earth. So if you're going to reign with him, that means you're going to be here on earth reigning with him. Now, a lot of people might hit mute button or smash one of those buttons to get me off the screen, whatever. But the Bible speaks for itself. And that's what we have to listen to, is the Bible. When understanding comes in its fullness, when understanding comes in its fullness, then you'll look back and you'll think, man, how could I even have believed that? Well, you know how we believe things? Do you know how understanding and belief, where it comes from? It comes from our teachers. That which is taught to us. Everybody that's in what we call the church today, everybody that's in the body of the Mashiach today, your understanding of this book is through your teachers. Because many of you don't open up the book for yourself to read it. You look to your teacher. And it says, I'll give you shepherds according to my own heart, that's going to feed you with knowledge and understanding. Now, I have 4 men in my life. None of them are presently alive, but 4 men in my life that I look to as my teachers. A lot of things that I've learned through this book and through Torah, I've gained from my teachers. Because that's what he gives us. He gives us teachers to feed us with knowledge and understanding. But notice now, the teachers that he gives us, the shepherds that he gives us, how does he give it? It's according to his heart. It's according to the Most High's heart. And he tells us in Jeremiah chapter 23, he says, I have not sent these men, but yet they run. I have not spoken to them, but yet they prophesy. And prophesying is anytime you take up this book and start speaking on what the prophets had said. If I take up a Just like I'll do what Peter did on the day of Pentecost. Peter took up Joel, the prophet Joel, and spoke his prophecy, what Peter was prophesying. I could take up the precepts of Joel and speak from that and preach from that, and I'm prophesying. Doesn't make me a prophet. I'm just prophesying because I'm speaking the precepts of Joel. I can speak yes, go ahead.
So people who come to other people and they try to give them like a forecast of their future, they shouldn't listen to them.
I wouldn't, me personally. Yeah, because that's kind of like sorcery and everything. The Torah tells us what truth is. It's already, when we understand Torah, he lays it all out. Now, it's kind of mysterious. I mean, you have to do some research and you have to build, and you have to build on the precepts, which is what's written in Torah. Those are the precepts. But when you build on those precepts that's already been written 1,000 years ago, you can see 1,000 years into the future. You can actually see. Yeah, I would stay away from that. Yeah. They had, what do they call them? Astrologers. They had those, and charmers. They had them in Torah. You can see it in Torah. They had those who would try to tell people's future. And sometimes they would get it right. Sometimes they would, a lot of times they would get it wrong, but we're not, what is it called? Necromancers? Isn't that what it's called in the Bible? He calls them that, necromancers, which are people who try to tell your future, or get into astrology. Did I say that, astrology, or what is that when they talk about the 12 zodiac, they get into all of that. Yeah, you get that is like necromancy. The Bible calls necromancy. So yeah, I would stay away from that. In fact, anything that deals with bringing spirits back from the dead, we shouldn't be dealing with anything like that. Like King Shaul, he went to a witch to conjure up Samuel, bring him back from the dead. So anything in that spiritual realm, and when people try to tell you your future, like I can see your future, tarot cards and all that, those are like witches. And he tells us, he said, suffer not. Our law book says, suffer not a witch to live. So if we're not even supposed to allow a witch to live, why would I listen to anything they'd say? But the teaching of Torah would tell you would explain the future through, the future of nations, the future of people, corporately, not so much individually, but corporately. It'll explain it. Nationally, it'll explain it. Now, where are you? Where are you going to end up? One thing, the promises that he made, he's not going back on any of his promises. He's going to keep the promises. I want to share something with you that Shaul was teaching the Romans. Romans chapter 4, and I want to look at verse 13. Romans 4 and 13. If you believe in the Mashiach, the Christ, the anointed one, the Messiah, if you believe in him, you have to believe in the promises that he made to Abraham. If you believe in Christ, you have to believe in the covenant. maybe later on we'll get to Ezekiel chapter 20, where it talks about he's going to bring them back under the, you know what he's going to bring them back under the bond of? The rod or the bond of the covenant. It's in Ezekiel 20. Ezekiel 20. He's going to bring all his people back under the rod or the bond of the covenant. And that's a future prophecy. So is he going to rewrite a new covenant? No, he's not going to rewrite a new covenant. It's the covenant that has already been given. But in verse 13, for the promise that he should be heir of the world. Now, this was a promise that was given unto who? Abraham. It was given unto Abraham that he was going to be heir of what? The whole world. He stood to inherit the whole world. And when we look at the world, what it in the context of the promise or first he made a promise to Abraham. First he made a promise. After he made the promise to Abraham, then he enters into a covenant of Abraham. Because the promise, we see the promise of Abraham in Genesis 12, Genesis 13, we see the promise that was given unto Abraham. And that promise that was given unto him was that his seed, and we know, Brother Shaul later tells us, he didn't say unto seeds as many, but unto seed, which is one, which was the Mashiach. But he says, unto thy seed, he was going to make his seed like the stars of heaven for multitude. And in chapter 22 of Genesis, he's speaking to Isaac. And Jake, I think it's Isaac. He says it's going to be as like the sand by the seashore. And then in another place he says like the dust upon the earth, or the dirt that's upon the ground of the earth. That's the dust. If you can count that or number that, that's how your seed is going to be. Well, that was a promise that he made to Abraham. And he told Abraham, this is your inheritance. Now, if Abraham's seed was going to be innumerable, well, he's got to have some place for him to stay. I mean, you just have to understand, if he's given him the seed is going to be innumerable, where is all that seed going to be? Where is all that seed going to be that's going to be innumerable? Well, here it says the world, but actually it should say his seed was going to inherit the earth. It's going to actually inherit the earth. Here he says, heir of the world. I know sometimes, you have to qualify certain things, because even in the world, when it talks about the end of the world, in the Greek, it talks about eon. Well, eon is simply an end of an age. And so they say the world comes to an end, or the end of the world, or whatever. They're talking about end of an age. So you have to qualify what this world is. When you say world, you have to read it in the context in which it was given. The context in which it was given was not given to Shaul after the resurrection. The context in which it was given, you have to go all the way back to Genesis. You have to go back to when he spoke to Abraham. So let's go to Genesis chapter 12, and let's look at verse 2. Genesis 12, Bereshit, which is in the beginning, Bereshit, chapter 12, verse 2. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. Now, this is a promise now, that if you believe in Jesus Christ, if you believe in the Mashiach, the Messiah, the Anointed One, if you believe in him and you believe that he came and he was here on earth, then you have to believe this promise, because his very presence on the earth, like we read in Romans 15 and 8, let's go back to Romans 15 and 8. Let's rehearse that. Stay with me. Romans 15 and 8. Now I say that Jesus Christ was a minister of the circumcision for the truth of Elohim. Now the circumcision is what you have, the circumcision, which is Israel. You have the uncircumcision, which is all the other heathen nations, all the other Goyim or Gentile nations. So he was a minister of the circumcision, which means he came through Israel. He came through the circumcision, which is Israel, for the truth of Elohim, to confirm the promises that were made unto the fathers, not just one, but many. So there was many promises that was made unto the fathers. Now, when you look at the fathers that we're speaking of here is the fathers like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They were like the fathers. When they referred to them as the fathers, they referred to Abraham, Yishak, and Jacob. And from Jacob, his name was changed to Yasharal, because they went into Egypt as a family, but by the time they came out of Egypt, they came out a nation. And so that's why the Most High, when Jacob wrestled with him and he said, "What is your name?" He says, "Why you ask me my name?" And then he changed his name from Jacob, which meant, anybody knows what Jacob meant? It meant surplanter. He surplanted. So he was a trickster. He was what you would call a con man in our day and time. He was a con man. Jacob was a con man. So he says, I know what Jacob means, but I'm changing your name from Jacob to Yasharal, making you a prince of Elohim. So he changed his name to Yasharal, and that was a great nation, because the Most High knew you're going into Egypt as a family, you're going into Egypt as a surplanter, but you're coming out as a prince, a go-between between all the other people and heaven, Shamaim. So when we look at the circumcision, that's Yasharal, for the truth of Elohim, for a confirmation of the promises made unto the fathers. So let's go to Genesis. We were in Genesis chapter 12, verse number 2 and 3. And I will make of thee a great nation. I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curses thee. And in thy seed shall all the families of the earth, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. All the families of the earth be blessed through this promise that he had given unto Abraham. Now, let's go to Genesis 13 and verse 16. Genesis 13 and 16, and he says, "And I will make of thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered." Now that's a lot of people. That's a lot of descendants. But that was a promise that he was making unto Abraham. Now, where are you going to put all of this seed? If he's going to be true to his promise, because we know he's not a covenant breaker. He's not a truce breaker. He's not a promise breaker. If he makes a promise, he's going to keep it. So if this is a promise of his, where are all of these people going to be? So another thing, let's go to Genesis 17, verse 5. Neither shall thy name anymore be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee, and I will make thee exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. This is a promise that Christ confirms. The confirmation of this is confirmed. So when we look at, I'm trying to pull out, I don't want to pull out all of these. So we have Abraham, then in Genesis chapter 22, chapter 22, he's in verse number 17. That in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as of the sand which is upon the seashore, the first sandwich in the Bible, as the sand which is upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. So this is the promise that he made unto Abraham. So you gotta, if all of his seed was going to be like the dust of the earth, the sand by the seashore, the stars of heaven, well, there has to be some place for him. He's not going to stack them on top of one another. There has to be a place for him. That's why when we look at Romans 4:13, let's go back to Romans 4:13. When it says, for the promise that he should be heir of the world, that means his seed and his inheritance is going to cover the face of the earth. That's the inheritance of his seed was going to be upon the face of the earth. That's what they stood to inherit. And so he was going to be heir over the whole world. Like he gave the promise unto Abraham. That was a promise that was given unto him. But that promise, we see that, and Paul goes on to say, the promise that was given unto him was not given through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. Because when he made this promise to Abraham, was this before Mount Sinai or after Mount Sinai? Well, it was before Mount Sinai. When he made the promise unto Abraham, it was before Mount Sinai. So the promise was not restricted to the law, because in the law now, the promise was given. Who was the law given to? Who was the law given to? Moses, and given to Israel. The law was given to Israel. That's who the law was given to. But the promise, when he gave it unto Abraham, it was to his seed. And he says, you're going to be the father of many nations. And so, and Paul picks it up. He didn't say of seeds as many, but of thy seed, which is Christ. So let's look at Galatians 3 and verse number 29. And if ye be Christ, then are ye Abraham's seed. And look at now, heirs according to the promise. The promise that was given unto Abraham, we become an heir of that through Christ. So everywhere that you see earth, you're going to see the seed of Christ and the seed of Abraham. And that was a promise that was given unto Abraham, and it was confirmed by Jesus Christ. Well, now we're looking at something that is reflected in the future, because when you look at where his seed's going to be and their inheritance, when you look at the world now, you don't see the glory of Abraham. You don't see the glory of Christ. And I'm going to make a few people, probably a few people get upset, but you don't see it worldwide, what we just seen in the scriptures here. Because what we see worldwide now is corrupt kings, corrupt nations, and corrupt people all over the face of the earth. There's not too many seed of Christ or the seed of Abraham around the world. Not covering the face of the earth like it's promised unto Abraham. So when you look at the promises that was given unto Abraham, you're looking at something that even goes beyond our present day. We're talking about something that goes into the future. There's some things that has to happen upon this earth before all of the promises that was given unto Abraham are fulfilled. All the promises, in order for them to be fulfilled, there's some things that's got to come upon the face of the earth. In Proverbs chapter 10 and verse number 30, the righteous shall never be removed, but the wicked shall not inhabit the earth. So all of the wicked and the wickedness has to go. It's actually going to be uprooted. Hallelujah. He's taken all of the wicked and the unrighteous and the corruption. All of that's got to go. He's cleaning up. He's going to clean up his earth. Look at verse number 31. The mouth of the just bringeth forth wisdom, but the froward tongue shall be cut out. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked speaketh frowardness. And all of this is going to have to be uprooted. It's going to be taken out of here. So let's get another witness in Psalms 37 and verse number 9. And it says, the evildoers shall be cut off, but those that wait upon Yah, they shall inherit the earth. For yet a little while, and the wicked shall not be. Yea, thou shalt diligently consider his place, and it shall not be. So the wicked and the unrighteous and the corrupt and the froward, all of them's got to go. They have to get up off the earth. They don't inherit the earth. They don't inherit the earth. It says in the same chapter, verse number 22. Let's look at verse 22. For such as be blessed of him shall what? Inherit the earth. And they that be cursed of him shall be cut off. So those who are wicked are going to be cut off. The righteous shall inherit the earth. The meek, I'm looking for the meek. I know Jesus says it, but he says it in, He says it in the Beatitudes, but it's written in the Old Testament, in Psalms. But so let's go to Matthew Matthew chapter 5 and verse number 5. Psalms what? Okay. Psalms 142 and verse number 5. Thou art my refuge and my portion in the land of the living. There's one in but let's go to Matthew 5 and verse number 5. And it says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. So this earth is going to be full of the seed of Abraham that are weak, that are meek, and that are righteous. It's not going to be full of wicked, unrighteous, froward people. All of them have to go. Everyone that is froward, disobedient, that's not in the covenant, that's not a seed through Christ, all of them have to go. And Jesus even said it. Jesus even said it in Matthew chapter 13. And this is the parable of the wheat and the tare, the wheat and the tare. And let's start at verse number 24. And another parable, 13:24. And another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares? Verse 28, and he said unto them, An enemy have done this. The servants said unto him, Will thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Listen to what he says, verse 30. Let both grow together until the harvest, and in the time of the harvest I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them into bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. So it was the tares that got gathered first. Now, when you go down, they wanted to get an explanation of this parable. So you go down to verse number 36. Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came unto him, saying, Declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. And he answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom. Notice now, the good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked. Now, it's already been established that the wicked is not going to inherit the earth. That is a principle in the teachings of Torah. The wicked will not inherit the earth. The enemy that sold them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, or the end of the age, and the weepers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of this age. So, or end of the world, but it's age. So he said he's going to gather the tares first. He said he's going to gather the tares first. And here he says in verse 40, as therefore the tares are gathered first and burned in the fire, so shall so shall it be in at the end of this world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend and them which do iniquity. The lawless shall not inherit the earth. The meek is going to inherit the earth. He says, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father, or their Ab, who hath ears to hear. Notice now he says, who hath ears to hear, let him hear. So are you listening to the voice or the spirit that is speaking through here? Or have we been diverted into thinking something else? Because by the end of this age, he's gathering everything that is wicked, things that offend, and the iniquity. Iniquity is lawlessness. All of those he's going to gather. They're the tare. He said the devil is the one that sowed the tares. So the devil is the one that has told people and has misled people into following into his teaching or his understanding, which we find out, like Jesus says here in verse number 41, these are the tares. Son of Man shall send forth his angel, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend and them which do iniquity or lawlessness. He's going to gather all of them, and he's going to cast them into the fire because they do not inherit the earth. Who is the heirs of this world? It's Abraham and his seed, which is going to be counted as the, what did he say? As the dust of the earth, the sand by the seashore, the stars of heaven. When he's speaking that and that promise unto Abraham, that was speaking of a future event, even in our future. That's what he's speaking of. So all of these other people have to go. Well, let's look at Luke chapter 17. Luke chapter 17, and let's start with verse, I don't want to read all of this in his teaching here. So let's start with verse 26. I really want to get down towards the end here, but just kind of set context here. And as it was in the days of Noel, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man. They did eat, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. So who was destroyed? It says they entered into the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. So was Noah destroyed? Noah and his family was not destroyed. So when it says destroyed them all, it's speaking of all those who were not on the ark. All of those who were not on the ark were destroyed. Likewise also as it was in the days of Lot, they did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they builded, they planted. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed all. Again, who was destroyed? It wasn't Lot and his two daughters, but it was everybody else that was destroyed. He said, even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. In that day he which shall be upon the housetop and his stuff in his house, let him not come down to take it away. And he that is in the field, let him likewise not return back. Because in this day, when the Son of Man comes to gather his people, you're not going to want to be trying to, well, I got an agenda to keep. I don't want to go today because Monday I got to go to work, or I got to get all my stuff. I'm not ready to travel. I got stuff in my house. Some folks can travel light. Some folks takes suitcases when they travel. I mean, they have a whole bunch of stuff when they travel. They got to have some, but then you have some who could just take a light bag. So he said, don't go back to getting stuff in your house. You know, those who are in the field, I'm not done taking my crop. I got to get back and get my food. No, don't do that. He goes on to say, remember Lot's wife, whosoever shall seek, this verse 33, shall save his life, shall lose it. And whosoever shall lose his life shall preserve it. And verse number 34, I tell you, in that night, there shall be two in one bed. Now, men is in italic, which means it was added. It wasn't a part of the original writing. In the original writing, it said, I tell you, in that night, there shall be two in one bed. They inserted men, and this is why some people in the church think that you could be a homosexual and still be saved, because two men were in one bed. No, that's not it. Two in one bed. The one shall be taken, and the other shall be left. Two shall be grinding together. The one shall be taken, and the other left. Two shall be in the field, the one shall be taken, and the other left. Notice now, he's talking about one taken and one left. One taken and one left. And they answered and said unto him, where, master? And he said unto them, now when they're asking him where, are you thinking that the disciples are asking of the ones who remained or the ones who were taken? The ones who were taken. The ones who were taken, the disciple says, where are you taking these? Two will be in the bed, one will be taken, the other left. Two working on a job, one will be taken, the other left. Two will be in the field, in the farm, one will be taken, the other left. Where are you taking them? So they were asking about the ones who were going to be taken. And he says, wheresoever the body, thither will the eagles be gathered together. So you go to the 19th chapter of Revelation. 19th chapter of Revelation. And he says, I'm not going to read all this, but let's go down to verse 17. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great Elohim. So remember what Christ said when they asked him where? What did he say? Where all these eagles, these birds are going to be gathered together. That's where he's taken all of these people. Remember, he's taken them away. And remember, he compares it to Noah and Sodom and Gomorrah when Lot and his daughters left, who were destroyed. In the times of Noah, who was destroyed? It was everybody who wasn't on the ark was destroyed. So come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great Elohim, that ye may eat the flesh of kings and the flesh of captains and the flesh of mighty men and the flesh of horses and all, and of them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. So this was the flesh of all men that he had gathered, and he gathered them together. He snatched them away. He took one remained, and he took one. And he brought them over here to this great feast. It even says the supper of the great Elohim. He called all these birds, all these eagles, and he says, y'all eat up this flesh. Y'all going to eat up this flesh. And the flesh was of kings, captains, mighty men, those who sat on horses. These were people of all class. Royalty, those who were in military, these were all of the people that were wicked, the wicked ones, the ones who were corrupt. Like he said in Luke or in Matthew, the 13th chapter, he said those who offend and those who did iniquity, which was lawlessness, small and great, It means older people, younger people. It meant all of them. All of them, small and great. They went to this great supper. Notice now, it's the supper of the great Elohim. So he gathered all these people together to eat that flesh. Now, where do you think their spirit went? Well, he said he cast them into a lake of fire. So you had the flesh that was eaten by the eagles, but their spirit, like in the days of, he says, the reapers came and gathered the tares first. Their spirit, they had a body, and they went into the lake of fire. Like he says, there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So I want to go back to Matthew chapter 13. And verse number 41. Son of man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity. And that iniquity there is lawlessness, because you have people who are tares. You have people in the world that does not believe in the commandments. And you got some who don't believe in the covenant. They don't even believe in the covenant. The covenant that Israel was under, that Christ came to confirm. So let's look at that, them that do iniquity. Let's look at that. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 4. And I'm going to start with verse 13. And he declared unto you, listen, his covenant. He declared unto you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform. 10 commandments. And he wrote them upon 2 tables of stone. So what was the covenant? The 10 commandments. It says it right there. Which he commanded you to perform. 10 commandments. The covenant was simply 10 commandments. When I start to study this and look at this, and so I'm trying to wonder, I'm beginning to wonder, how was it so grievous? Because even 1 John and John, Yahuchanan, 1 John, he says his commandments are what? Not grievous. Because there was only 10. The covenant that he gave to him, and he declared unto you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform. 10 commandments, and he wrote them upon 2 tables. Okay, so and not only, do you know that he didn't leave it up to Moshe to write them? He didn't leave it up to Moshe to write them. He wrote them with his own, and we'll see that in Exodus chapter 31 and verse number 18. Exodus 31 and 18. And then we'll come back to we're going to come back to Deuteronomy, but Exodus 31, 18. Because a lot of people think that this was done away in Christ. How could it be done away in Christ when he came to destroy the works of the devil? He didn't come to destroy what Moses wrote. Do you know if he destroyed what Moses wrote, do you know what he would be doing? He would be destroying himself. That would be like suicide. He would be destroying himself because he was Torah. He was the walking Torah. He was what Moses wrote about. That's who he was. So if he came to destroy what Moses wrote about, then he came to destroy himself, which ludicrous. Now, who came or who was here to destroy what Moses wrote about or to destroy Christ? It was the devil. Satan is intent on destroying Moses. And in effect, if he can destroy what Moses wrote about, he would be destroying Christ. He would be destroying him. If he can destroy Christ, he can destroy what Moses wrote about. He tried to, he thought he did, but he wasn't able. But verse 18, Exodus 31:18, and he gave unto Moshe, when he had made an end of communing with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tables of testimony, tables of stone written with the finger of Elohim. He wrote it himself, not Moses, not Moshe. The Most High wrote it. And I just think I like to think about it. When I read in the news that they believe the Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia. It's in a church in Ethiopia. They've been fighting and warring. A lot of blood's been shed. They said that they've seen dead bodies around, laying out on the ground. They've been fighting for a number of years. But they think that within this church building is housed the Ark of the Covenant. If that is true, what he wrote with his own finger on tables of stone is still here today. But who is intent to destroy it? He's intent on destroying the covenant. Now, you have to be careful, because if you're trying to destroy what was written with his own finger, the covenant that he made with Israel, if you're trying to destroy that, then you are yourself an agent of Satan. You yourself are an agent of Satan. And a lot of people have a hard time with that, because a lot of people are religious or in church. And they would say, we would never be an agent of Satan. But if you are trying to destroy what Moses wrote, you are an agent of Satan. And that's kind of hard to swallow. So let's go back to Deuteronomy 4:13. And he declared unto you his covenant. So whose covenant is it? It's the Most High Yah. That's his covenant. That's the covenant that he gave unto Israel. Now, we won't read all of it, but in the 24th chapter of Exodus is when that covenant was confirmed by the blood. They actually had sacrifices, and it was ratified by blood. He made a covenant with Israel. He ratified it by the blood of the sacrifices, and then they had a dinner. They sat down and ate with the Most High, or a theophany of the Most High. But they sat down and ate. It's in the 24th chapter of Exodus. We're not going to get to all that today. But they sat down and ate with him. So it was his covenant. Now let's look at Exodus chapter 19 and verse number 5. Exodus 19, verse number 5. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep whose covenant? Because people look at it, they look at the 10 Commandments as, oh, that was given to Israel, or that's Israel. They put Israel's name on it. But whose covenant is it? It's his covenant. That's his writing. He did it himself. And he told Moses, now I want you to teach this. Teach this covenant to Israel or Yasharal. But it's not Yasharal's covenant. They're not the owners of it. They're supposed to be the obedient one or the children of the covenant. That's who they're supposed to be, but it's Yah's covenant. He says, if you obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people. For all the earth is mine. So those who are in his covenant are peculiar. Even to this day, you're peculiar if you're in his covenant. Well, I thought we was in the covenant of Christ. When Christ came, he came to confirm all of the promises that was given unto the fathers. Remember we read that? Unto the fathers. So it was Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Moses was one. He came to confirm all of that. He came to destroy. We read that in 1 John 3 and 8. He came to destroy the works of Satan, the works of the devil. That's what he came to destroy. Not the covenant, but he came to destroy the works of the devil, because the works of the devil is against his covenant. Everybody who sins against his covenant, that's what he came to destroy. That was the blood of the New Testament, was to forgive the sins. Okay, let me insert this and then we're going to come back. Let's go to Matthew 26 and 26 because actually it's verse 28, Matthew 26, 28. For this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. So when you look at the New Testament, we're under the New Testament. The New Testament simply puts your sin against his covenant in remission. And he can only do that with his blood. So he says here, the blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. Now let's go to 1 John 3 and verse number 4. 1 John 3 and 4. Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. And that's his blood for the New Testament. It is to put all of that sin against his law book in remission. That's what his blood is for. Not to start a whole new, something new. When he came and shed his blood, it was because Israel had gotten, let's go back to Deuteronomy, where we were. Back to Deuteronomy. The 4th chapter. And we were reading verse 13. We read in verse 13, and he declared unto you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, 10 commandments. and he wrote them upon 2 tables of stone. So when you look at the 10 commandments, and when Christ came and they were asking him about the 2 great ones, when you look at the 10 commandments and you study them like Shaul did, because he said, I would not know what lust was except the law says thou should not covet. But when you study the 10 commandments, you'll see that the first 4 of the 10 shows your love for the Most High. The first 4 of the 10 shows your love for the Most High. The remainder 6 of the commandment shows your love for your neighbor. Because I don't want to get into it too much today, but we're going to look at, especially number 5, because 5 deals with, honor your father and your mother, be obedient unto them all the day. But also, do you know that when Christ was on the cross, what did he say to Yahuchanan about his mother? You remember? That's his mother. That's his mother. Not his biological mother, but it was his mother, and he was supposed to see after her. Even in the congregation, you have those who are elders in the position of a father, maybe not a biological father, but they take the role of a father. Women take the role of a mother, even though they're not a biological mother. I don't want to break all that down today. I don't have time. But even in that 5th commandment, it's not just to your biological father and mother, because we have that example with Yahuchanan or John. She's your mother now. So he had to show her the same kind of respect and honor that he would his own mother, even though it wasn't his mother. So that brings in the 5th commandment. So the commandments from 5 to 10 shows your love towards your neighbor. It shows your love towards your neighbor. That's why Jesus said on these 2 commandments, the Holy Shema and love thy neighbor as thyself, you keep all of it. Because when you study the 10 commandments, it's dealing with the love for the Most High towards heaven, the first 4. 5 through 10 is dealing with the love for your neighbor, how you love your neighbor as yourself. When you study the whole 10, because out of those whole 10 commandments, which is the covenant, that's where you get all the teaching. So let's look at it. Verse number 14. And Yah commanded me at that time to teach you what? Statutes and judgments, that ye might do them in the land whither ye go over to possess it. So the keeping of the 10, when he taught them the other statutes and the judgments, they all fell under those 10. Even when he built his kingdom and he built the government, it all falls under those 10, because those 10 is the covenant that he keeps, or that he gave. He gave it to Israel, but it was his covenant. It's Yah's covenant. Let me show you something else that belongs to Yah. It's not yours. It's not mine. It's not Yasharal. In Leviticus chapter 23, and we're going to go back to Deuteronomy 4. There's something else I want to pull out of that chapter. That whole chapter is a lot of meat, just a lot of stuff to unpack in Deuteronomy 4. A lot of stuff to unpack. But let's go to Leviticus 23, verse number 1. I'm going to show you some things. And Yah spake unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Yasharal, and say unto them concerning the feasts of Yah, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feasts. Now I read that kind of slow because I want you to see something. Whose feasts were they? It wasn't Israel's feast. It wasn't Yasharal's feast. Those feasts are not Yasharal. We're coming up on the new year, the next new moon is the new year for Yasharal. The next new moon is the new year for Yasharal or Israel. And on the 14th day of this new year, well, let's go on further. Maybe you'll see it. Okay. So he says concerning the feast of Yah, and he goes on, ye shall proclaim a holy convocation, even these are my feasts. So what if some man comes along and says, oh, you don't have to do those feasts anymore. We're done with all those feasts. How could you do away with something that don't even belong to you? It's not even yours. See how clever the devil is? He makes you think, oh, well, we're done. We're done with that. I'm trying to dig up more and more because in 190 AD or 190 CE, a man by the name of Polycrates, and this was the first council of Ephesus, a man by the name of Polycrates went before the quote unquote church of that time, the emperor of the church of that time, which was Rome. And he went before him and he fought to keep the 14th of Abib or Nisan, 14th of Abib, as the only day to celebrate the feast of Passover. And he stood up for that, and they had a council. He fought it. But Rome said no. Rome says, no, we're going to celebrate Easter, and it's going to be on the first day of the week. And the reason why there was a couple of reasons why they did that. They wanted uniformity, that's what they said. But it was in honor to their goddess, Diana. It was in honor to their goddess of fertility, which was Diana. She was the goddess of the Ephesians. It was unto her and Astarte and Diana is the same. That's what they called their goddess was Diana. Great is the goddess of Diana. That's what they called it. But it was the same as Astarte. But they wanted to keep that holiday. And so what they did was, if you don't come up and celebrate our holiday the way we design it, then we're just going to call you heretical. And because you know what our book says, you don't want to have nothing to do with heretics. So they threw that on Polycrates and some of the other ones. You're heretical because you won't keep our Easter Sunday. And all of those who try to follow, they quelled it and squashed it. But he fought to keep the 14th of Nisan. Now, in modern day, I had to dig up and try to find this because looking at the post-apostolic fathers, that they call them the Church of the Father, or how do they call them? Church fathers, which was Polycarp, Irenaeus, Ignatius, and some of these other ones. But you go back and start digging up a lot of that. The ones who fought against Rome were called heretics. If they fought to keep these feasts, they were called heretics. I wonder what they call us today if we try to keep the feast. Haters. And really, it's not our feast. Like he says here, holy convocations, even these are my feasts. So who is man to do away with the Most High's feast? When a man rises up to do away with the Most High's feast, he's just an agent of Satan. Because Satan and the work of Satan is always to destroy Moses' teaching. And it wasn't really Moses' teaching. Where did Moses get it from? He got it from the Most High Yah. So everybody or anybody who fights against that is fighting against the Most High. So let's look at number 3. 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest, a holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of Yah in all your dwellings. So whose day is it? It don't belong to us. The Sabbath day is not mine. The Sabbath day is Yah's. It's his day. In fact, Jesus said in Mark 2 and 27, he said, man was not made for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath was made for man. He says, I am the Lord of the Sabbath, or I am the owner or the ruler of the Sabbath. So anybody that teaches Christ did away with the Sabbath is nothing but an agent. I know it's kind of hard. It's really hard to accept. You have a lot of people that will not accept this kind of teaching. But it's not again, this book don't belong to you. This is the word of the Most High. This is his book. We're simply earthlings. That's all we are. We are the dust of the earth. Now, if we're born again, we go from earthlings to sonship if we're born again. Okay? It is the Sabbath of Yah in all your dwellings. So it don't belong to man. It doesn't belong to man. Let's look at verse number 4. These are the feasts of Yah, holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. Listen to verse number 5. In the 14th of the first month at even is Yah's Passover. So because you're going to hear me say it more as we go on, leading up to the 14th of Abib. Whose Passover is it? It's Yah's Passover. So what man has the authority to rise up against Yah's Passover? I think we should do it then. I think we should do it. I'll do it whenever I want. We won't do it at all. Well, who does it belong to? It don't belong to you. There's not a man living today. I don't care what his name, title, position. You guys can have it. Take the name, titles, position, all of that. There's not a man alive today that owns the Passover. So how could you do away with it? How can you say it doesn't matter anymore? It's just an agent of the devil. That's why Christ came, was to destroy the works of the devil. Because he's always been against the Most High. Always. So everybody that turns against the Most High's word are actually agents. Now, a lot of people don't know it. A lot of people don't know it. But it's Yah's Passover. Now, let's go back to the 4th chapter of Deuteronomy. And I want to go down to verse number 26. I want to go down to verse number 26. Now, he always does things in 2 or 3 witnesses. Doesn't he say 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established? Well, we're going to see 2 witnesses here. I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day. So even in his creation, when he created, in the beginning, Yah created the heavens and the earth. The heaven, the Shamayim, and the Arats or arts is witnesses. They're 2 witnesses, and they serve as witnesses not only against Israel, but we'll see that the greater sun by day and the lesser sun by night are also 2 witnesses for Israel. So you have heaven and earth that's a witness against them, but you have the sun and the moon that's a witness for them. Always, there's got to be 2 to 3 witnesses, and let every word be established. That is a principle of the Most High Yah. Now, why did he establish that principle? Because he knew man would come along and take one scripture out of context and just use one scripture to build a doctrine. Any teacher, preacher, seminar director, whatever, that uses one scripture to build a doctrine are not following the principles of Yah. Because he sets up, he says 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. And who said the scriptures cannot be broken? Jesus said it. He said the scriptures cannot be broken. So you got to have 2 or 3 witnesses to build doctrine. You got to have 2 or 3 witnesses to have a doctrine, so you don't fall in this, I'm going to take one scripture and I'm going to build a doctrine. That principle is not of this book. So I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that ye shall soon utterly perish. Now, right after he gave them, I mean, Deuteronomy is kind of like a rehearse. I mean, he's repeating a lot of stuff. These be the words. That's actually the name of the book. These be the words. But he's reiterating, doing a what's that? A recapitulation. Did I say that right? So he's kind of doing a summary review of what he gave in Exodus. But he says, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that ye shall soon utterly perish from off the land whereunto ye go over Jordan to possess it. So he's saying, heaven and earth, as heaven and earth are witnesses, you're going to be destroyed off this land. You're going to utterly perish off this land. Ye shall not prolong your days upon it, but shall utterly be destroyed. And I wonder why. I wonder why they were going to be destroyed. Because they broke covenant. They broke covenant. In fact, even in less than 40 days, they broke the covenant. They broke the covenant. Now, we're thankful that he has a throne called mercy, which is not. Let's understand that when we use words like throne and stuff like that, it's not like a human throne like we see sitting up on, where a throne where a king sits on and everything. His throne, he says, the heavens of heavens can't contain me. He says the whole heaven is my throne. So it's a place where he occupies through authority and rule and governance. And when he governs, he has to judge. So that's where his throne is. Even when Christ, it says that Christ is going to sit on the throne here on earth, he's going to rule this whole earth. He's going to rule this whole earth. And he's setting up his governance and his kingdom and his government on this whole earth. So that's where his throne's going to be. And it says that we're going to reign with him. So he says, you're going to utterly perish off this land, mainly because of your disobedience. And verse number 27, and Yah shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen, whither Yah shall lead you. And there ye shall serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. Now, he warned them about idolatry further up in this chapter. So it says here they're going to serve, you're going to serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. Let's go up to verse number 15. Let's go up to verse number 15. Because this is exactly what they did. And he says, you're going to be scattered throughout the world and you're going to serve wood and stone. Listen to verse 15. Take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves, for ye saw no manner of similitude on the day Yah spake unto you in Horeb, which is Sinai, out of the midst of the fire, which was coming off of the Mount Sinai because there was fire up there. Let me show you that fire that was. It was in Exodus 24. We're going to come back, but Exodus 24, and look at verse number 15. And Moshe went up into the mount, and a cloud covered the mount, and the glory of Yah abode upon Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And the seventh day he called unto Moshe out of the midst of the cloud. In verse number 17, and the sight of the glory of Yah was like devouring fire on the top of the mount in the eyes of the children of Yasharal. So when he says he spoke to you out of the fire, like we read in Deuteronomy 4 and 15, that's what he's talking about. And Yah spake unto you, I'm back in Deuteronomy 4:15, and Yah spake unto you in Horeb, which is Sinai, out of the midst of the fire. We see that there. Listen to verse number 16. They heard the oracles and they heard the voice coming out of fire, and they lived. But he said unto them, the reason why I'm doing it is because I don't want you to corrupt yourselves. Listen, lest ye corrupt yourselves. And what would they do? And make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure. Listen to what he says. The likeness of male or female. So any graven imagery, whether it's a male or a female, was in violation of their covenant that they had entered to. And he even told them that they were going to defile themselves. So, like we read back down to 28, I hope I'm not going too fast here. And there ye shall serve gods, the works of men's hands. Now, how did they hand them? Through wood and stone, by the carving out of wood and stone. They made images. And not only images of a male, but of females. So anytime you see images carved out of wood and stone, because a lot of people say, well, graven in Esther, we don't have no stone images. He said wood and stone. So anything that's carved out of wood or stone that you make as a image to bow down to is idolatry. So you got to check yourself. Do you have anything that's made and the image and the manifestation of the Most High? So within the word, you have the giving of it through Moses. But Moses just gave it, but it wasn't Moses' word. It was the Most High's word. This is my word. I'm giving it to you. In fact, he says, this is my covenant. It's not even yours. This is my covenant. I just want you to be obedient. I just want you to be obedient. So when you study the covenant, the Holy Shema is, hear, O Yasharal, Yahuwah, our Elohim, is one Yahuwah. That's the very first commandment. The very first one is the Holy Shema. There's only one Elohim, and his name is Yahuwah. And that's the very first one. He gave us his name over 6,800, sometimes almost 7,000 times in Scripture is his name given unto us. I've been here over a generation. If you measure a generation in 40 years, that's kind of how the Bible measures a generation, is 40 years. I've been here over a generation. It wasn't until the start of my second generation that I knew his name. On the cross or on the tree, then what happened? Well, he became sin, and then he died. But it's just an understanding of it. But if you got more than one Elohim, or more than one God, then you've missed the first one. The second one is you're not supposed to have any imagery, no graven image, not only of stone, but of wood. You're not supposed to have any graven image to bow down to and serve. That was breaking the second commandment. So, and like I said before, the first four are like, your love towards the Most High. So there's not supposed to be anytime you get something that is, it even says in here, somebody might be able to find it because it says picture. Even having a picture is in error, because that's in the Old Testament somewhere. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, somewhere around there. Somebody might be able to look it up, but it's a picture. We're not even supposed to have pictures. I thought it was in, I don't know if it's in Deuteronomy, but even the fact that you have a picture of what represents deity, because you're not even supposed to have a picture of him. Nothing that represents deity, because he's a spirit. What we see is manifestations. We don't see him. We see manifestations. And so this was a principle that was given unto Israel, Yasharal. It wasn't given unto all other kind of nations. All other kind of nations had, that's how they built that molten calf. It's because they came out of Egypt. And Egypt had all kind of gods. They worship all kind of gods. So when they came out of Egypt, it wasn't strange for them to make a calf god, because they got that from Egypt. And they said, this is the God that brought us out of Egypt. So they broke number two. They broke 1, 2, and then 3, because they said, this is the God that brought us out of Egypt, and it was a molten calf. But number 3, number 3 commandment is you don't take his name in vain. Well, let's look that up into the Hebrew text. And actually, it's Deuteronomy Chapter 5 is when he rehearses the commandments. And chapter number 5, and verse number 11. Deuteronomy 5:11, and then we're going to go to the Hebrew text and look up that word vain. Look up that word vain. And in the ancient Hebrew lexicon, it's H7723, and in the Strong's number is H7723. That's the Strong's. If you go to the ancient Hebrew, is it up there? Ancient Hebrew lexicon, see it says 14 or 1461. In the ancient Hebrew lexicon, it's number 1461. Then you have a hyphen, then you got J, and then N in parentheses. Is that up there? Okay, so that J and N in parentheses means you have to go, as you go down, scroll down here, you have to go to J and then N, because it gives you the context. Because 1461, the first one, you have the root word made up of 2 Hebrew characters, which means a crash, a storm, a desolate. That's what vain means. But when you go to J and N, he's using this word in the context of what it's written. So then I scroll down to J and then N. So J, it's actually 3 letters, J, and then you got storm, desolation, a desolating storm. Then look at N. A loud and destructive crashing of thunder and waves. That's the first definition of it. What's the second definition? Empty, in the sense of destroyed. Empty words or actions. So actually he's saying, when you look at the word vain, they destroyed his name. They destroyed his name. They made it empty. That's when you take his name in vain. When you destroy his name, make his name empty of useless, then you've made it vain. You've wasted it. You've made it useless. It's empty words. It doesn't mean anything. So what is he saying there? Well, when you look at the Hebrew writing, everywhere where you see capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D is his name. Yod He Ud He. Yod He Ud He. Yod He Ud He. That's his name. Yahuwah. He even says in Psalm 68:4, he rideth in the heavens on his shortened name, not abbreviation, but a shortened version of his name. He rideth in the heavens on his name Yah. So Yah is a shortened version of his name. He gave us his name. In the Hebrew text, he gives us his name. Every time you see a capital L-O-R-D in all caps, that's his name. It's 4 letters. 4 letters. Now, when the Greeks took it, they put tetragrammaton, which is 4. Tetra means 4 in Greek. Grammaton means letters. So it's 4 letters. So they would put the tetragrammaton in there. When it was translated into English, they took the tetragrammaton and they made L-O-R-D. So they took the Greek tetragrammaton and made L-O-R-D. The Masoretic Jews, when they took the ancient Hebrew writings and then they put vowel points on everything on it, they said his name was so sacred, nobody was supposed to utter it. The only ones who could utter his name was the priest when he was in the temple. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they just put in the Septuagint, they didn't put his whole name. They just put tetragrammaton of 4 letters is what the Greeks took. Now, when they translated from the Greek Septuagint into like the Latin or into the English, then they changed it over to L-O-R-D. Now, in Hebrews, in the days of Yasharal, in their history, antiquities, they would call on Baal. And they would call, just like they did with the calf, they said, this is the one that brought us out of Egypt. But they would call on Baal and use that name for their... But technically, you're still calling on Baal if you use Lord. Because Jeremiah 23:27 says, which things you cause my people to forget my name by their dreams, which they tell every man to his neighbor, for their fathers have forgotten my name for Baal. And if you look at the definition of Baal, is Lord. Yeah, Jeremiah 23:27. Jeremiah 23:27. Let's pull that up there. Which think to cause my people to forget my name by the man to his neighbor, as their fathers have forgotten my name for Baal. So that was a god back in their day that they would call on. They would call on Baal. And so many of them taught Baal. Now you translate Baal, you translate that into English, then you're saying Lord. But they did not say Lord back in that day. They said Baal because they didn't speak English. Lord is English. It says Baal from Wikipedia. Baal property Baal was the title of a meaning owner, Lord, in the Northwest Semitic Baal. It appears 90 times in the Hebrew Bible in reference to various gods. So we shouldn't even say Lord. Yeah, I mean, I try to refrain from it. You have to be careful. Now, in the English language, Lord means a owner, somebody who has the rule or owner of a certain province. A king would set up lords because lords are below a king. And so a king would set up, I'm going to give you this area. You're the ruler over this area. You're going to be the Lord over this area. Okay. So that's in the English. So, I mean, in different languages, you have different definitions. That's why a language defines culture. So now in the Hebrew culture, now, if they didn't call on Yah, they would call Baal. And that's in the ancient Hebrew. Instead of saying Yah, they would say Baal. Well, they called, I'm not talking about nationally. You still had people who were faithful unto him, but most people did. They fell into idolatry. Even in Ezekiel, he told Ezekiel, what was it, 5th or 6th, somewhere around there, 7th chapter. He said, look through this whole, I want to show you what these people are doing. I mean, they were even crying unto Tammuz. So they was calling Tammuz. That's a double.
I mean, to me,
Yeah.
how I feel that we shouldn't even be saying Lord, because then you fall into different interpretations of what it means. Like if you say Lord, other people don't know what you mean that you're meaning Lord, the Most High God.
Yeah.
They're looking at Lord, and it could have been transliterated as Lord to deceive.
Yeah. Now there's a. Yeah, and see, when we speak it, at least in the English language, when you speak it, it's the same pronunciation and syllable because we don't make a differentiate. We don't differentiate between all caps and lower cap. It just sounds the same. But in other languages, especially in the Hebrew language, you're dealing with something different because Abraham, he was the Adon or Adon to Sarah, and she called him Don. Don meant somebody it was her husband or the one who ruled over her. She gave him that respect as the Don. And some of the other people who call themselves Jews, they changed Don to Adonai. So Sarah called him Adonai. Now, when I say Don or Adon and Adonai, it sounds different, and you kind of know what I'm talking about when I say Adonai or Adon, or if I say Baal. Oh, wait a minute. You said what? Baal. Oh, don't say that. In fact, he tells us in Exodus 23:13, don't even make mention of any other gods. Don't even let it come off your lips. So for some people, if you say Baal, I don't have nothing to do with you no more. You just violated, the Most High. But just by the pronunciation of it. So there's a difference between Baal and Adonai or Adoni or Adon. Because when you say Adon, Don, then you're talking about somebody that the Italians, they came up with Don. What was Don? He was over the whole family, that was the Don. And that's what Abraham was. He was the Don to Sarah and the whole family structure. So there's when I say Don or Adonai, you know what I'm saying. If I say Baal or Molech or something, you talk about some other gods now. But if I say Lord, what are you saying? Yes. No. In the lowercase Lord, lowercase Lord, is like Adonai or Adon. Right. But all caps, when you have the Lord in all caps, now you're saying that's his proper name, that's his name. They don't. Uh-huh. I mean, you have to know, you have to, knowing what Baal is, knowing what Adonai, Adon, knowing what Lord, knowing what Yahuwah, knowing his name, you have to know those differences. Yeah, he's a Phoenician god. Yeah. That Israel fell into idolatry with. It's Baal. Huh? It was idolatry. It was it says here, it's a supreme male divinity of the Phoenicians. Oh, you know who called on Baal? Jezebel, but in a recent movie in our day. Ghostbusters. When they were looking for the keymaker, and who was the other one? And the gatekeeper, the keymaker, and everything. And so she comes down. Actually, it was the guy that came down, and it was Bill, what's his name? Bill Murray said, "Oh, that's Baal. Baal's taking the female gender." He said it right there. He said it right there in the movie. Yeah, Ghostbusters. It was in Ghostbusters. And it says Baal has taken a female gender. Oh, that's Baal and female gender because she came down. Because Baal actually is a male divinity of the Phoenicians or the Canaanites. It's just a Canaanite or a Phoenician deity. And they called it Baal. And it was in that, I was surprised to hear that when Bill Murray said that in Ghostbusters. You know, he actually said Baal. So you have to watch it. It's towards the end where, you know, yeah, at the end there, yeah. So yeah, that was kind of a strange movie. But they pulled some stuff out of the Bible for that movie. So where were we at? Back in we'll finish up in Deuteronomy, I guess. We were at 5:11, taking his name in vain. So when I was going through all of these, I was looking at what we call the church. And so I'm thinking, well, does the church take his name in vain? That's when I came up with, I really didn't know his name till I studied it. So when you look at vain, it means to destroy or make useless. And that's exactly what they did. They just made it useless. We don't know. In fact, if, you know, I don't want to destroy anybody's faith, but just let me say this. I don't tend to, destroy anybody's faith. And like I said at the beginning of this, you got some people, you know, they're leaving here. They're going to go to heaven, live in heaven all their life, rest of their life for eternity. I mean, if you believe that, that's fine. But this book doesn't teach that. This book tells you what's going to happen here on earth. And it tells you that the Mashiach, Christ, is coming to reign here on earth. He is going to be the king of all kings. That means here on earth. You know, it says we're going to reign with him. Even in Revelations, it says we're going to be kings and priests, you know, for him forever on earth. I mean, it says it right there in Revelation. But you got some believe that they're going to be up in heaven for eternity. I mean, if that's what you believe, I'm not going to, I'm not pouncing on it. Everybody's got their belief. But all I'm saying is the Bible teaches what's happening here on earth. That's what the Bible teaches. So I'm not trying to destroy nobody's faith. Just, it is what it is. But as I was doing my studying on the name, because he says, what is my name and what is my son's name, if you can tell? And without going through the whole length of study and what I looked up and everything, I found it odd that the same name in Hebrew that's used in the Old Testament is pronounced Joshua. The same name in the New Testament is pronounced Jesus. I also found out that there's no mention of Joshua, as I speak this, in the New Testament. But when he is referred to, they say Jesus. Let's go to Acts. I'm not going to go through my whole study here that I studied, but in Acts chapter 7, verse number 45, Acts chapter 7, verse number 45. And then we'll see another spot too. But Acts 7:45. Which also our fathers that came after brought in with Jesus into the possession of the Gentiles, and Elohim drave out before the face of our fathers unto the days of Daud. Now, who is he talking about? He's talking about Joshua. But that's what I'm saying. In the New Testament, like I said, in the Old Testament, if you look up the word Joshua in the Old Testament, it's pronounced Yahusha. In the Old Testament, it says Joshua in English. But when you look at that root word and you trace that root word back to Hebrew, because they didn't speak English. They did not speak English. I know how we are and how people will shed blood and die. In fact, people would put me out if I even taught that. Even when I was doing my research and I just kind of dropped a few hints here and there because I was doing my research on it. I didn't know it yet. I was still researching it. I almost got put out of church. I was just doing research. I didn't have a full conclusion because I didn't know. But I was just kind of saying, well, that's what this says. But I had to I was called a heretic, So I had to, wait a minute, I got to defend myself. Wait a minute now, let me finish doing what I'm doing. I mean, so I know how we feel about that. And so that's why a lot of times I stay away from it because I don't want to ruin nobody's faith. And really, when people wanted to put me out, really, if I'm in his hands, Jesus said, can't nobody pluck you out. As long as I'm in the hands of the Most High, can't nobody pluck me out. Now, they might put me out of a physical church, but you can't pluck me out of his hand. You can't do that, So I don't want to harm anybody's faith or cause anybody to, look ill on him. I mean, even on the cross, his name was in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. It's right there. It wasn't in English. It was in Latin. It was in Greek. Now, I've learned as I go through and I study, I pull up the Greek Septuagint, I see the Greek, and then the Latin Vulgate, and then the English, and I look at some of the ancient Hebrew, trying to get an understanding across all the languages because that's how the book is given to us in English. Nobody spoke English. There wasn't even a language back. English was not even a language back then. English is actually a derivative of the Germanic language. And it has its own rules and everything that's different from the Hebrew that it was written in, or even the Greek. Now, the Greek Septuagint was around, like I said, before Christ. And they had the Greek Septuagint. And the Greek Septuagint, if you can get the Greek Septuagint translated into English to be able to read it, if you don't read Greek, when you do see it, that's not what the scripture, you know what most people would say? That's not what the scripture says. That's not what the scripture says. I know what the scripture says. Yeah, but the Greek Septuagint predates the Latin and the English. So the Greek Septuagint was taken from the original Hebrew. The Greek Septuagint was around before modern Hebrew. What you see now, the modern Hebrew, Greek Septuagint was around before that. So the Greek Septuagint is closer to the original Hebrew writings than what we get in our English. The ancient Hebrew was really dealt with culture because that's how you understood who he was through the culture. And even Jesus, a lot of times in his parables, he used a lot of cultural things and botany and rocks and the trees and animals, and because that's how they understood the Most High. Now we're more technological today. I mean, there's a lot of things that we understand in our English. Even this, the King James, they want to make it more modern. So they put different words in there, and you read it and it gives you a little bit different understanding. So sometimes the understanding could be lost, especially when you look at, the father. It actually, in the ancient Hebrew, it's Ab. That's what they would call every father of the house. It was Ab. The first character represents the ox head, which was strength and power. And that second letter is Beth, which is the house. So you had the strength and power of the house was Ab. So when you look at father in English, father is usually just somebody who has a seed. He gives off his seed, he becomes a father. So it's sometimes you lose a little different understanding of what certain words are when you go from the original language that was written in into English or modern day English. And some things are lost, but to understand who Ab is, you have to really get into the culture to understand who he is. And we don't do that. Because even now, as we're moving up on the 14th day of Abib, this is Ab's feast. It's not ours. It don't belong to the church. It don't belong to Israel. He said, this is my feast. I just want you to do it because you're going to represent me. And if you do represent me, like it says in Exodus 19:5, he says, if you do this now, you're going to be a peculiar people. You're going to be a peculiar people. You're going to be, it says in Deuteronomy Chapter 4, it says, other nations are going to look at you and say, oh, you're a wise and understanding people. Even the land that they had, they were supposed to seed the land and harvest the land 6 years. 7th year is supposed to rest. No other nation does that. No other nation does that. Yasharal was supposed to do it. But Yasharal got away from the Sabbath of everything. In Leviticus chapter 26, and verse number, let's look at verse number 30. Let's at 33. Leviticus 26:33. Israel has always had a problem with the Shabbat. Even to this day, they still have a problem with it. To this very day. And I will scatter you among the heathen and will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate, and your cities waste. Then shall the land enjoy her Sabbaths, because the land was supposed to rest. Not only was the Sabbath for the people, he made, the Sabbath for man, like Jesus said, but even the land was supposed to have a break. Take a break, because it enriches the soil. When you get into you understand and get into farming and understand that it gives your soil a chance to regenerate, to stay good, so that when you do plant it. And even when they went into the land, initially went into the land, he told them, I don't want you to take any harvest off those trees. He says, you plant the trees and plant the vine, even the first harvest of the vine, and the fruit trees and stuff. That first harvest, throw it away. So it wasn't until I think the 3rd or 4th harvest that they were allowed to actually start to consume it. Because for one thing, the people in the land had polluted the land. And to him, pollution, we look at pollution going up into the sky with industrialism and everything. But they use that land, the way he talks about polluting it, is they use that land unto their gods and their deities. And that's how they polluted the land. You pollute the land when you don't give a land a day of rest. Or its Sabbath, that 7th year. No cultivation, nothing, give it a rest. Well, we're not doing that. We don't believe in no Sabbath. We're going to keep doing it year after year. When was the last time this land had rest? My family been here 100 years and it had no rest. Well, then in the eyes of our Father, they've polluted the land. They polluted the land. Because anytime you go against his word and his statutes and commandments, especially serving other gods, that's what got Israel cut off. Verse 34, then shall the land enjoy her Sabbath as long as it lieth desolate, and ye be in your enemy's land. So this also brings out a point that right now, Jerusalem and the land that Israel is going to inherit, right now it's desolate. Because it's not what they say it is. No. He said either they're right and the Bible's wrong, or the Bible's right and they're wrong. I'm going to go with the Bible. It says, as long as it lieth desolate and ye in your enemy's land, then shall the land rest and enjoy her Sabbath. As long as it lieth desolate, it shall rest, because it did not rest in your Sabbaths when ye dwelt upon it. Because Israel always had a problem with Sabbath. And it's nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. Yasharal still has a problem with Sabbaths. So, and we're on the fourth commandment now. So the fourth commandment is to remember the Sabbath, that it is holy. So does the church, quote unquote church, do they keep the fourth commandment? Right now, the church is almost 0 for 4 now. When it comes to his covenant, we're talking about his covenant. When it comes to his covenant, because you have a lot of people say, "Well, I don't have to keep none of that because I'm in Christ." Well, if you are in Christ, you would be obedient to the covenant. If you are in Christ, because if you're saying you're in Christ, you're in the Mashiach, and you don't have to keep none of this, then which Mashiach are you in? Because he did say there would be false Christ with a plural. He did say that. And he said there would be false prophets. So he says it didn't lie desolate. As long as it lieth desolate, it shall rest, because it did not rest in your Sabbaths when ye dwelt upon it. Now, isn't it interesting that he's talking about this and they haven't even gotten to the land yet? This is Leviticus. This is when they're in the wilderness. So what he's doing, he's prophesying about their future. They haven't even gotten the land yet. He's telling them the land is going to rest and it's going to be desolate because you didn't allow it to rest when you were in it. Wait a minute, Moses, we haven't even got it. What are you talking about? We haven't even gotten the land yet. We haven't even gotten in the land. But he's prophesying. Moses was a prophet, and he's prophesying that you're going to go into your enemy's land. He told him you're going to be in your enemy's land. The land's going to be desolate. The city's going to be desolate. It's going to rest because you would not allow it to rest in your Sabbaths. So let's go to Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 20. Chapter 20, it does say we're going to go back into be brought under the bond of the covenant. But let's go to Ezekiel 22 and verse 25. Now, this is after, because Moses said some things while they were in the wilderness. Now, this is after they've been in the land. They've had kings. They've fallen. They've fallen from kings. They've gone into the Babylonian captivity. The Assyrian captivity has come upon them. After the Assyrian captivity, you have the Greek captivity. And then after that, you have the Roman captivity. Because the time of the Messiah, they were in captivity of Rome. But listen to what it says, verse 25. There is a conspiracy of her prophets in the midst thereof, like a roaring lion ravening the prey. They have devoured souls. So who have devoured souls? Who devoured the souls? It says it right here. The prophets. The prophets have devoured souls. They have taken the treasure and precious things. They have made her many widows in the midst thereof. How did they do that? How did they do that? Verse 26. This is how they did it. This is how they devoured souls. This is how they've taken the precious things. This is how they made widows in the midst. This is how they did it. Her priests have violated my law. and have profaned mine holy things. They have put no difference between the holy and profane. No difference between that which is holy and that which is profane. And then you have to see the things that are profane that was taught to us through Moses. Those things that were profane back then are profane now. It's no difference. The only thing now is with Christ, through his blood, he's given us remission of sins of those transgressions. Now, I don't just knowingly transgress, because if I knowingly transgress his covenant, then, there's a matter of restoration, but there's no more sacrifice for sin. There's no more blood that's going to be shed. They have put no difference between the holy and profane. Neither have they showed difference between unclean and the clean, and have hid their eyes from my Sabbaths, and I am profane among them. So it's the priests that have done this, the prophets that have done this. And then he goes on down in verse number 30. He says, and I sought for a man among them that should make up the hedge and stand in the gap before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none. So the only one that stood in the gap to stop the destruction of the land and of Israel was Moses. He stood in the gap. He was a man that stood in the gap for the people. He said, I couldn't find nobody. He couldn't find nobody to stand up in the gap that he shouldn't destroy it. So he destroyed all. The land is desolate. The cities are laid waste. They're in their Sabbath, and Israel is in their enemy's land. That's where they are now. And that's where it's going to be until he comes back to gather them and bring them back. And I know a lot of people, there's some people going to Dimona and everything like that, but the cities are actually laid waste and the land is desolate. When you look at what the 15th chapter of Genesis says, when he makes that covenant, he made the promises to Abraham in 12, 13, 14. He makes a covenant in 15, because in 15 is when he tells Abraham, go get you some bulls or ox or whatever, cut them up and put them on the altar. And then he put Abraham in a deep sleep. His spirit came down and went through the animals and the blood, sopped up the blood, because he made a covenant with Abraham. And while Abraham was in a deep sleep, he told him, I'm going to give you all this land. He tells him he gives him the boundaries of it. From the great river of Egypt all the way over to the Euphrates, and from the sea so it says the Great Sea, I think. And so you got all this huge border, which is much bigger than that little sliver of land that's over there now, But then he said Abraham's seed is going to be where? They're going to inherit where? The whole earth. They're going to be over the whole face and the cover of the earth. But he does have a place where he's going to put the seed of Jacob. He does have a place for them, and it's not that little sliver of land that's over there. That couldn't hold all of Jacob's seed anyway. But Abraham's seed is going to be all over the whole. He says it in Romans 4:13. We read that earlier. That is going to inherit the whole world. I mean, his seed is going to inherit the whole world. The whole earth is going to be covered. So he has to get rid of all of the wicked, all that are lawless. He has to get rid of them because he's going to give it to the meek and to Abraham's seed. And that's where we see all the other people being taken out of here. They're going to have to get off the earth and everything because he's going to have this earth for Abraham's seed. Now, he does have a city, because Abraham was looking for a city whose builder and maker is the Most High. He does have a city that's going to come down on the new earth. And that city is going to have 12 gates with the 12 sons of Jacob, their name on them. And then the foundation is going to be the 12 apostles. But everybody on the earth does not have access into that city. Not everybody on earth. There's going to be a population on earth. There's going to be people on earth. But everybody doesn't have access into that city. It even says who has access into that city. Those that keep his commandments, they have access into that city. And that city is a glorious city. And the ones who have access in there don't have to worry about death. He says you don't have to worry about, you're not going to die anymore. There's not going to be no more death. He says there's not going to be no more sorrow. I'm wiping all the tears from your eyes. No more sorrow, no more death. They'll have access into the city. But there's going to be other nations and other people, because coming out of the city, you got the water, then you've got the trees, and on the trees is the, what does it say? The leaves are there for the healing of the nations. That's coming out of that city. So that hasn't happened yet. You mean he's going to have healing for the nations? I didn't think there's going to be nations. There's going to be people. Abraham's seed is going to flood the earth. He's given the whole world to him, his seed. But not the corrupt ones, those who are corrupt, those who are wicked, those who offend, and those who have, what did he say, iniquity. Because he said that. Did we see that in Matthew 13 and verse, was it 31? 41, Matthew 13 and 41. There it is. Son of man, the Ben Adam shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend and them which do iniquity. And they're going to be cast to the furnace of fire. So they have to leave. Everything that pollutes this world, all the idolaters. Let's go to Revelations 21 and verse number 8. But the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. So if he's getting rid of all of the wicked, and he names them all right here, and he gets rid of all the righteous, then who's going to be on earth? Nobody's going to be on earth, and then that's contrary to his faith. So let's go to Isaiah chapter 45. Isaiah chapter 45. I'm going to finish up here. Anybody got any questions? Isaiah 45 verse 18. So if he gets rid of all of the wicked, all of the corrupt, all of those who offend and all the iniquity, and then he takes all the righteous and all the holy off the earth, then there leaves nobody here. And then that's contrary to his faith. Because he says here, for thus saith the Most High Yah, that created the heavens, Elohim himself, that formed the earth and made it. He hath established it. He created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. I am Yahuwah, and there is none else. So he's not going to make an earth and leave it vacant. That's not what I'm going to do. I formed everything. I made the heaven. I made this earth to be inhabited. And to be inhabited by who? By earthlings. I mean, he made this earth to be inhabited by people. And that's why you're going to have nations. You're going to have people. And it's going to be of the seed of Abraham, because that was his promise that he made. And Christ came to confirm it. So everything that was written in the old, it's going to come to pass, especially what the prophets have written. And then I like verse 19. I have not spoken in secret in a dark place of the earth. I said not unto the seed of Jacob, seek ye me in vain. It's not for any usefulness or emptiness. You're not seeking me in vain. I, Yahuwah, speak righteousness. I declare things that are right. So if he made this earth to be inhabited, it will be inhabited. The new earth that he creates will be inhabited, because he's not going to create an earth and it'd be vacant. That's not why he makes it. So, and he says, I declare things that are right. Who was it? Who was it that said, who has been his counselor? Declare it now if you Job, I mean, he broke Job down. He broke him down. He says, where were you? I formed all of this. Where was you when I made the light and the shining through of the water and the different properties of the water? He just broke it all down. He said, where was you? So he declares things that are right, and we have something coming up. Oh, I didn't get through all the 10 commandments. The covenant, we just got to number 4 because we're running out of time. It's going on 2:00. We just got to number 4 because are we really in covenant with him or are we not? Because if you're really in covenant with him, that covenant that he made with us was those 10 commandments. That's scripture. And Christ came for the remission of sins or to stop you from breaking his commandments. That's why he came. Came to destroy the works of the devil. We read that. That's scripture. He came to destroy the works of the devil. He didn't come to destroy Moses' teaching. Anybody say he came to destroy Moses' teaching? No, he did not. He came to destroy the works of the devil. The works of the devil is to transgress everything that the Most High says. If the Most High says stand still to transgress it, you would sit down. If he tells you to go right to transgress it, you'd go left. I mean, he had this down so neatly that the cloud was over the temple by day and a pillar of fire by night. When the cloud lifted up, they packed up the tabernacle, everybody packed up their tents, and they start moving, following the cloud. And the cloud would only have them moving. He only had them moving for 6 days, but then he would rest. And all of Israel would rest. And then he would move again because they always rested on that 7th day. They would count 1, 2, 3, Yom 1, Yom 2, all the way up to Yom 6. This is the 6th Yom, and then the next one was the Shabbat or the Sabbath. They always kept. Well, I shouldn't say Israel always kept it because they didn't, because it says it right here. They broke it. They broke. Well, they broke the Sabbath before Mount Sinai. You look at the 16th chapter of Exodus. In the 16th chapter of Exodus, when he gave them manna, and he told them, you do it on 6 days. On the 6th day, take double, because there ain't going to be none on the 7th day. And then on the 7th day, here's some people out there trying to get manna. There was none out there. And the Most High told Moses, how long am I going to be with this people? And that was before Mount Sinai. So some people might say, well, the Sabbath wasn't given to Mount Sinai. That's not true. If somebody says the Sabbath wasn't given to Mount Sinai, that's not true. That's in error. Because how could they break the Sabbath in the 16th chapter of Exodus when he didn't go up into Mount Sinai to get the 10 commandments to the 20th chapter? So the Sabbath was given before.
And also that the scripture talks about the guy without picking up sticks. Wasn't that before they
Well,
got to the promised land?
well, that was Numbers 15. So, before the promised land. Oh, yeah. Before they got into the promised land, yeah. He was picking up sticks or working. I mean, what would you pick up sticks for? I mean, you plan on, either they were going to either build something, he was going to go to work and build something or whatever. So you don't do that. You don't do that on the Sabbath day. Now, Moses and Aaron didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do. So they said, put him inward. And Moses says, I'm going to go before the Most High, see what he says. Most High says, stone him. Oh, man. He said, stone him. Woo. So Moses says, well, fellas, we got to stone him. And then after that, he says, you make tzitzit or the fringes, that the tzitzit, you put that law on the hem of your garment, and that is a reminder. I I remember what happened to this guy, but he broke that commandment. They killed him. So I remember that with the tzitzits or the fringes. That's what it was, and it was for the border of your garment. So if your garment end at your ankles, that's where it would be. Well, we put them, we do something different, but that their garments was different than the garments that we wore today. So they had those long robes. Now underneath their robes, they had their ephod, or their breeches, and so, but then they'd have the robes that would go down, and that's just how, because they were in a desert, they were in a hot region around the world, and so they had that real light fabric and linen, and it covered them. I mean, people, if you look at people over there now, they don't go out there naked. Now, over here in the United States, soon as summer comes, people start peeling clothes. But over there, the sun was so hot, they would cover. They would cover their arms, cover their legs, because the sun was so hot, it would burn them up. But over here, soon as summer comes, folks start peeling clothes. Yes. Mm-hmm. And it actually helps them to keep cool, just like when we go under an umbrella or something in direct sunlight. But yeah, it's funny that you say that. Yeah. So they had their bodies covered. Their customs and their dress is really different from ours. We're westernized. All of our fashion. Notice our fashion. Where does our fashion comes from? It comes from Europe. We don't wear fashions from China or Africa or something. I mean, if I came up here in China garb, garments from China looking like the Chinese, what is he Chinese now? So our garments comes from Europe. Our styles comes from Europe. But there's other garments, even over in Africa now, you see their garments. It's really different from ours, And if we wore that garment, what is this? Keep Africa Alive Day? I mean, we hear all kind of stuff, So because it's just their garments that they wore, so it's really different than what we wear today. It's just really different. So, any questions or comments, Brother Zeke? Any questions or comments out there? It's 2:00 now. I'm certainly glad everybody's here on this Sabbath day, and those who are tuning in, we certainly welcome you. And we say Sabbath peace or Shabbat Shalom to you, and greet everybody else and that's in the house. And we're going to end this class now. So, Shalom.